Welcome everyone to Bethesda Gaming Saga. I'm Steve0.
And I'm Elder the Noble. Join us as we journey through some of gaming's most immersive and ambitious games ever made. In anticipation for Starfield, we are going to be looking at our favorite BGS games. Today, we are going to look at Steve0's favorite BGS game, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. But before we get started, today's broadcast has been brought to you by our Patreon member, Falcor. If you would like to join our Patreon and have a shout out in our episodes, head on over to our Patreon. Now, back to the original programming. So, Steve0, why is Skyrim your favorite BGS game?
Well, it's hard to put it into anything under, a decade of explanation, but I'll try my best. And also to go back on that, thank you, Falcor, of course, being a Patreon member. It's a huge, huge honor to have you there, and we were grateful for it nonetheless. But going into Skyrim, so like last week, we talked about Fallout 4 and yours, Eldon. And Skyrim I got to go back a step before I really say what made Skyrim to me. But it goes back to Oblivion. And before that, I had no experience at all with BGS games. I'd seen Fallout, the original Fallout, looked the terrible asymmetrical design, and just wasn't my thing at the time. And Morrowind, I didn't even hear about. I don't know if it just wasn't on my radar at the time what I was interested in. But so Oblivion came by, and I remember I got it through, I want to say, GameFly at the time. That old subscription-based thing. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think because I was so broke, I just couldn't afford anything. So I remember getting Oblivion through that, and I played it, and I was like, "Oh, I'll try something new, see what this is about." And I don't know if it was the open world concept of it, or similar to your experience. Like you get out of the dungeon, you're hit with, who was a Patrick Stewart played the voice of Septim the Third. I think it was.
That's funny. I've been watching X-Men.
yeah, right. I mean, Patrick Stewart's just, that's a voice when you hear it.
Right.
So immediately I was like, okay, they got some talent here. Okay, maybe this is something the guy's not cheap. Must be a good game. So I went through Oblivion and blew me out of the water how good that game was. And it was one of the ones I played the main quest pretty thoroughly. And then I went on the side quest later because I didn't know how long I was going to keep the game. But I couldn't believe the concept of all the side quests, even the Daedra and going into the Oblivion itself in the main quest. And then I can't think of any of the Daedra gods. Their names are always so funny, but it was just everything was interesting. So Skyrim wasn't too far off after that. I can't remember the years wise, but I didn't play Oblivion when it first came out. This was still, I don't even know how I picked it up, but everything laid dormant because I still wasn't big into Fallouts at the time. I think I played, I can't remember when Fallout 3 came out.
2008, I believe.
Okay. So I played it, and I was like, oh, wow, this is, they had Liam Neeson as the voice of the father, and I was like, man, these guys got some money or something. So, but the experience I had with Fallout 3 even, I was like, okay, I'm liking these games now. And I can't remember which I played first, to be honest, thinking back at it. But when Skyrim was announced, I was like, oh, it's going to be a classic. I know it. And it wasn't like the internet is now where like you just put everything out and every nook and cranny is being metadated and every ounce of it. So, right. I mean, it's like it's hard to hide from the truth anymore, even when you want to. So when 2011 came about and Skyrim came out,
11.
Right. I already had a good, chip on my shoulder that this was going to be something amazing. And leading up to the game, I was getting hyped, even more hyped. And I remember when they had a special offer for the soundtrack to be signed by the composer. And I had only heard one song, I can't remember where I heard it, somewhere on the internet. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And I got that soundtrack, and I was like, what? This is the greatest music I've ever heard in my life. I was already a big instrumental guy anyways. My wife hates it. I'd rather listen to instrumental music on Spotify all day than anything with words.
Last year's playlist for the year, the year
Mhm.
wrap up. Like a lot of it was sprinkled in with, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, The Hobbit, stuff like that. Yeah, I get it.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's just so many to choose from
Yeah.
nowadays. But the fact I got that soundtrack, I was already enthralled. You could say I'm already a fanboy, anyways. But you could really say that I got on that ship, and regardless what was being fired at me, and even if it was sinking, I was riding that ship all the way. So Skyrim comes out, and immediately I'm like, half of me thinks it was because I had the chip on my shoulder. Like it could have been the worst game starting out, and I think I would have been like, I'll defend this. But it just nothing could go wrong. Every aspect about it, from when you're first escaping Dragon Reach or not Dragon Reach, wherever you're at, from the opening,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
everybody knows. Hey, he's awake, and you create your character, and then the dragon's flying, and then you're escaping, and when you actually first escape that town, you get on your own, and that's when it was just like this world I saw, the detail to it. It blew my mind so much that I really still this day at a loss for words because I didn't know a game could be made this well.
Hmm.
And again, it had bugs, none that were so bad that I can sit here and say, "Oh, day 1 or day 10, this bug was terrible." Because the beauty they put into the story and the atmosphere and the music and how everything
Hmm.
just melted together it was hard for me not to love this game any more than I had. And you know, talking about the animals, the butterflies. I mean, I think even the bees.
Yeah.
Just everything you saw,
The
and then
ambiance.
yeah, it's just something about it like melted away with me. And this was like before I even got to the first city, before I even talked to another human. I'm just like, oh my gosh! And of course, I don't know how you are. I think you said this, but I don't even go. Like if it tells me to go down this path to the city, nope, I'm going left, going right. I'm going trying to climb a mountain, pick up everything I can on the ground. Like I'm not made it to that town. Probably the first 3 hours I played the game. I mean, swimming in the river. I mean, I was like, oh wow, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then when I get to this town, those little side quests start popping up. You're trying to help the
Hmm.
innkeeper.
Oh yeah.
You got a love triangle going on, and that's always the one I remember the most because like there was like four different angles you could take in that. And I remember I found out later. I can't remember. It was the elf. I think if you betrayed him, he couldn't become a follower. And I was so bummed because I think I did betray him in the beginning. And then I found out later he's a good archer. He'll teach you archery skills and all of this. And I was really bummed about that. But this game enthralled me so much that I just kept playing it. And unlike Oblivion, I said, okay, the main quest is estimated to be like 30 hours. I think is what the Prima guide said that I'd. Oh,
Hmm.
actually, no, I'm sorry. I got and you can kind of see it. I know we're not live on video, but out behind me, right there where my thumb is, that's the
Yeah.
Dragon Collector's Edition
Oh
for Skyrim right there.
yeah.
I'll pull that up when we get video going on with the podcast. But it came with a hardbound book, almost looked like something you would find in Skyrim with the logo, and it
Right.
was like the strategy guide,
Mm.
essentially. And I mean, just everything about this game, even the midnight premiere, like that was like one of the last midnight premieres they had. Like you just don't have those anymore.
No, you
Now everything's
don't.
digital, and midnight premieres were a blast. I mean, almost everything behind me is from a midnight premiere. Anything big, you know. And so Skyrim, I fell in love with the ambiance, like you said, every aspect you could do, every little thing. So I did side quest after side quest, and then I would do my own research. I would start digging in, like, okay, so why is this so special? What can you do here? Then you find out they have this AI system that was unheard of. That if you finish every single side quest, even if you think you do, more will just generate. They'll be
Yeah.
similar, but they'll be different too. I was like, what? You got to be kidding me. This game's never
Hmm.
ending. So
Right.
first thing on my
Now,
list was, oh, go ahead.
Now, a lot can be said about that. A lot of people don't like that because they look at that as developers being lazy, that it's just procedural radiant quests so that
Mm-hmm.
they can fill a bunch of content and they don't have to handwrite it. But I strongly disagree because them being randomly generated adds to the new experiences every time you play it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That
Right.
there is a good balance that BGS has done in the past and with Starfield will do in the future, it looks like, about achieving that randomness, but in a controlled way that adds new experiences. So
Yeah,
yes, Skyrim adding that and having that, I think, is not a negative thing, but a huge, huge positive. Absolutely, I
sure.
agree with you.
Now I can see some people's argument on that, saying because I know there was some quest, the internet I looked up at the time where like you finish this quest for this shopkeeper, and then you can come back to a town, that same town even, and it might be a different shopkeeper with a similar quest. You know, you might do the same thing, get a new reward. And I can see someone's argument with that as a mundane thing. It just regenerates
Hmm.
something similar. But
Hmm.
to me, on a game that, and I say perfect loosely because I know there are flaws with it, but in my mind, the game as perfect as that was to me, I'm like, this game will never end.
Hmm. Right.
And the one thing I'll say when later on, this kind of I kind of jump ahead here, but when they developed the DLC where you could build a house, like
Hmm.
that was like that pulled me right back in. Even as slow as I'd done everything, I was like, oh my gosh, I can build a house. I can put my own, monster heads up here or my armor stuff here.
Oh yeah.
It was more intriguing to go back out and look for wood or this or go to the smelting things or not smelting, so I can make nails and things like that. I
Right.
mean, they really did a phenomenal job in that. But with all that said, and I know I'm keeping it as controlled as I can because I could talk about it for days. It was it really boils down at the core of it that why it was my favorite was it's hard to just say one thing, but I thought hard on this all week. The one thing that did it for me, and this is going to sound kind of oddball to maybe some people that don't appreciate this, but the combination of the music with the ability to do anything, anywhere, at any time, even though there are other, open world games, the music is like the over the top, the off the top rope, elbow drop, in the center of the ring. Like it did it all for me. Like if the music was bad or the music was
Yeah.
not as focused from Bethesda
Right.
on that, I don't
Forgettable.
think I could rank it as my favorite. But the
Hmm.
music did something to me. It made me feel like I wasn't sitting in my chair in my living room, on my bed, wherever I was there, and that character meant more to me than like my own life at the time.
I
As
gotcha. Fallout
corny as
4, that music, that radio really
mm-hmm,
immerses you in it in a similar kind of way. Like you feel completely in that person
mm-hmm,
and that character in that world because you're listening to the music that sets the tone. So BGS is good about the musical tone going in with the game.
yes.
100%.
And I know we talked a little bit about Starfields, and I'll get off subject here just briefly. Like the music, that first soundtrack we get, the Starfield soundtrack, I really enjoy that. Like I feel like that's just a perfect tone for me. I know we don't 100% agree eye to eye on that, but for me,
Well,
it's perfect for me at the moment, anyways.
yes, and the thing is, it's I keep listening to it because just I'm hyped about Starfield,
Hmm.
and for those that have maybe missed it, I have said in the past that I am not the biggest fan of that about 10-minute Starfield suite that we've gotten. To me personally, it has sounded like kind of like generic Star Wars music or Star Trek music, just kind of generic and forgettable, much like the Fallout 4's original score, not the radio music. And but the more I keep listening to it and trying to, in my hype for Starfield, get into it, the more honestly it is very much growing on me. And I've really, especially that specific theme, that melody in the beginning, the da, da,
Hmm.
da, and just the remembering them talking about the it was a back when they were doing some older marketing when there was kind of behind the scenes and they were talking about the music and the going out, gathering, and then coming back, that you can even hear that not only in that the music reflected that game design.
Hmm.
And so that the music, and I've thought about that, and you can really hear it. And I've tried to really get into music because as much as I have the capacity and don't mind to turn off the music of a game and put on my own music, like I plan on sometimes in regardless of the state of the music, sometimes turning off the music and maybe listening to Sabotage by Beastie Boys
Oh
while
yeah.
I'm in a gunfight, something like that. I don't want to. I want to be able to enjoy the music of a game. Right,
Hmm.
like Fallout. That's why when I streamed the Fallout games, I hated to have to mute the volume, like the music, turn off the music, because the music is such an iconic part of the experience. Same
Yep.
thing with like Oblivion, Skyrim. So I want the music to be good, and I'm trying to get into it and enjoy it because I hope it is spectacular. You know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Now jumping back to Skyrim, I hate getting sidetracked on that when we're deep diving Skyrim, but I want to talk about Starfield so bad, and I know we're both itching at that
Yeah,
severely.
man, we'll go over it more in the extended
Oh
episode for
yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah.
We got some
But
things to talk about.
on the Skyrim, really, from my take, and I know I'm keeping this, well under the normal threshold you could say for what I thought I'd talk about, but Skyrim to me is just there's so much to point out. I can't, other than the music combination with the game, I can't say a specific thing like turned me for it to be my favorite game rather than against it. It's just the overall. I mean, I don't know what I base a lot of things on IGN, like their ratings, because they're
Hmm.
usually spot on. Like whenever they give a thing, I'm like, I agree with that, almost always. And I don't know what there was for Skyrim, but for me, it was a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, they put a 9.5 out of 10.
Did
While
they?
you were
Did
saying
they?
that, I decided to look it up. Yep.
So I never looked it up, and you think I would have after all these years, but yeah, Skyrim
Yeah.
just, it just, I had those points out there, but that's really it. I'm almost getting tongue tied because there's just so much information going through my head. I,
Well, you could say it's not one thing. You could almost describe it as like a perfect storm. A
yeah,
perfect
yeah,
storm of a lot of different things.
that's a
Um,
great analogy.
they actually it's interesting. I was not expecting that. Because Skyrim is largely considered Bethesda's best game by a lot of people. I would say that's the largest camp of Bethesda fans or people
Hmm.
who think Skyrim is their best game. But IGN gave Fallout 4 a 9.5 as well. That surprised me.
I mean, I know a lot
Hmm.
of people that love that game, and don't get me wrong, I did enjoy it. I just can't remember, like we talked on the last episode. I jumped around so far away from it. I do a little bit, not play for months, come back, and it's almost like you lose that, not that excitement per se, but you lose that, um,
Right.
I don't know, love
Oh, I
at the
got you.
moment for you.
And they gave just as just a side thing, IGN gave Oblivion a 9.3 and Fallout 3 an 8.8. I wonder what they
I
gave
thought Fallout
Morrowind.
3 would be higher. Not based on I hear more people, seems like, I see people all the time on Reddit talk about like Fallout 3 was that like saving grace. Like when they did it, they're like, oh, that turned so many people back into Bethesda and Fallout fans. And
Really?
maybe I think though a lot of that goes off if you look at Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 being the old generation
Right.
of how it was made. I think that's why people say that, because Fallout 3 opened up as a unique open world experience like Morrowind
Right.
and Skyrim, and that
Well,
maybe
I
that's why
was
they
just
say
about
that.
to look up Morrowind was a 9.4.
Ooh,
So,
that's one I would like.
um,
We talked about that last week. I would love to go back and play that, but it's so old at this point, and I
ah,
never played it. I don't know if I could do it. Like I watch clips all the
yeah.
time. I just don't know if I could do it.
So I've tried. So it's funny. I got a wild hair several months ago. It was much earlier in the year. This is when I saw it Xbox Game Pass. Because I go in and out of having Xbox Game Pass. Like if I
Hmm.
realize after a month or so that I've not played anything on it, and I look through and I'm like, I'm not gonna play anything on it, I'll cancel it. And then when
Yeah.
I see something I want to play, I'll get it back. Oh,
Yep.
I had it, and they had all the Elder Scrolls games. So I said, it'd be kind of fun. Let me boot up the first Elder Scrolls game.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute. Did I swing my sword? What
Right.
happened? I don't know what's happening. And I said, man, this is gonna have to I'm gonna have to watch tutorials just to learn. Like, because I don't. Again, when you jump 20 years in the future, it's hard to understand previous tech, right? So
Hmm.
right now, my son's only 9 months, but in 5 or 6 years, he's not gonna know how to operate a VCR like I did because
Right.
it's outdated tech. So
I know
that was
people
so.
nowadays that don't know how to operate a VCR that are like in their early 20s. They're
Yeah,
like,
right.
what?
So yeah, you got it. So I said, all right, well, let me jump into Morrowind. I've tried Morrowind before, couldn't get into it, but now that I've played a lot more BGS games, I'll try it. And so I hopped in. I really love that you're getting off of a boat. That's how you start your character. And I was like, all right, well, let me try to focus on the main quest. And they tell you, hey, go off to this big city. And the trip going to this big city was really long, and compared to, again, the outdatedness of it was
Hmm.
very boring.
Yeah.
And I know Morrowind is by a lot of people considered BGS's best RPG, and I want to get into it. I really do, but I don't know. I tried and I said,
Yeah.
forget this. Let me play Oblivion, and which I knew I'd like, and sure enough, I booted it up. I was like,
Have you ever
this is
played
great.
Have you ever played Elder Scrolls Online?
I've dabbled it into a little bit. You know, I've talked before about my father
Yeah.
and his gaming. That's the majority of what he plays. He
Okay.
played oh, what's that other MMO? That's an old school MMO. Dark Age of Camelot
Oh
and the
yeah.
Elder Scrolls Online. Now he's moved away from Dark Age of Camelot and he plays largely Elder Scrolls Online. But that's
Gotcha.
the majority of his gaming. He
I was just
likes
curious.
that
I recently
multiplayer
tried
social.
it, and it is all right. I mean, it's cool,
Mhm.
but it's very just like every other MMOs, very repetitive. You know,
Right.
you do
And
the
it's
same
the
thing, hack
right. And
slash, pick up something.
Right, and it's the same thing like I shared with you why I struggle with MMOs,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that
Yep.
everybody's doing the same thing
Yep.
that's not very immersive to me.
Now I will say this though about Skyrim, though it's my favorite game, and
Hmm.
by far, I can't. Witcher 3 comes close, really
Hmm.
does, and I could really top it back and forth, and maybe one time when we have not as much stuff to talk about on BGS, I'll switch over there and I'll throw a little Witcher 3 at the audience. But though that Skyrim be my favorite game, I truly believe it's fantastic all around, 10 out of 10 for me. Doesn't mean I don't have some problems with it, some real problems. And now I'll be discussing those problems in the extended episode where we're going to talk about them and some critiques and other Elder Scroll games. And especially what I'm really looking forward to is answer some Q&As that we receive from our Patreon patrons.
And on top of all of that, Skyrim is my least played modern BGS game. And I've been sharing my experiences over there, and I will continue to do so. As well as today, the day we're recording this, is exactly 3 weeks from Starfield's early access release
Woohoo!
and the first day of QuakeCon. So we'll be going over some things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
head on over to the Patreon to unlock the extended episode.
That's right. Until next time, guys, this has been Steve-O.
And Eldon the Noble for Bethesda Gaming Saga. May your adventures be filled with Nuka-Cola
And never end with an arrow to the knee.